Good evening and welcome to the San Bruno City Council meeting of May 24th, 2011. Thank you, San Bruno Garden Club, for the lovely floral arrangement they provided all of our meetings. Roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Here.
Mayor Ruane.
Here.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Here.
Carol, lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcements. I have a few announcements to make tonight in the way of some thank yous. First of all, we were honored to host the Secretary of Transportation last Thursday, Ray LaHood. The Secretary met with us here and spoke to some of the victims, went up to the incident site in Glenview, and we followed him to San Francisco for a PG&E demonstration. I have to tell you, he was very, very moved by his discussions with the City Council and the victims of the incident, and assured us that by late July, early August, we would definitely be seeing some changes in some safety practices and rules and regulations coming from his office, so that's very encouraging. Also, we do have the Posey Parade coming to San Bruno. It's the 71st annual Posey Parade on Sunday, June 5th. Mr. Ibarra, would you like to say something about that?
I just say, Mr. Mayor, in light of what this community's been through this last year, that the theme is San Bruno, City with the Heart, and the Lions and the city have been doing this for many years, and it'll be another appropriate time for the community to come out, and I know they'll enjoy some sunshine and enjoy the youth, the kids that are in this parade, and kick off summer, with the bang.
But also just the other day, last Sunday, we had another Glenview get-together in the park. The last one was here at the Senior Center. It was very, very successful, and so was this one. People stayed until past the 4 o'clock hour, and I do especially want to thank the San Bruno Lions, the San Bruno Rotary, the American Red Cross, the North Peninsula Neighborhood Group, and the Highlands Christian Church of Latter-day Saints and Bethany Presbyterian, as well as our volunteer song makers who were very good with the band. It was a wonderful event, nice barbecue, and got a chance to talk again to all of the Glenview residents in an atmosphere that wasn't antagonistic at all, and it didn't have a whole lot of questions about insurance and all the things that they're living with day to day. So it was a very good event, and we hope to have more. So.
Just like to add also, city staff Randy Schwartz and Tabby Yuki also did tirelessly to help plan that event.
Great, thank you. Presentations, we don't have any presentations this evening. Review of the agenda, any changes? Okay. Approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting of May 10th, 2010. Any errors, omissions? Seeing none, they will stand as submitted. Carol?
There was a contribution made by Half Moon Bay's Rotary Interact Club, and I neglected to say that it was specifically directed for the victims of the Glenview fire to be distributed in the same manner that the other monies were, and I just want to add that to those minutes.
Good, so noted. Okay. All right. Consent calendar, all items are considered routine or implemented early council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested by a council member, citizen, or staff.
Move to approve consent calendar.
Second.
Motion second on the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Number 8, public hearings. We do have a public hearing this evening. Notices have been published, posted, and mailed. We're going to hold a public hearing on the City of San Bruno 2010 Urban Water Management Plan. Staff, please.
Honorable Mayor, Council members, what do you have before you tonight for your consideration is the Urban Water Management Plan. As you are aware of, the city of San Bruno provides drinking water for our residents.
A little closer.
In order for us to be able to provide drinking water to our residents, is necessary to have in place two very important elements of that service provided to our residents. One is the supply, the water resource, and the system which deliver that resource to each home, to our residents. The water resource element of this service is governed by the Urban Water Management Plan, which is the subject of discussion for tonight. Our water resource is based on two major water resources. Is the surface water, which based on our master contract with PUC is provided through our contractual agreement with PUC, and our own groundwater production, which is governed by the groundwater management plan, which will come back for is under development right now, and you will see the draft plan coming back for your consideration in the next 2 months. To assess the reliability and sustainability of the system, the infrastructure itself, is under development right now, the water system master plan, and you will see that draft and recommended water system master plan at the end of this year, beginning of next year. The intent tonight is to have a public hearing to hear your comments and suggestion and recommendation on the developed urban water management plan, and at the next council meeting, staff will come back incorporating in the plan your suggestion, recommendation, and also any suggestion and recommendation for from the public for your approval. This draft plan was presented to utility subcommittee, and the recommendation and suggestion by the utility subcommittee were incorporated in the draft. I will let EKI was chosen to help us developing the urban water management plan, and I will let Matt Zucca to present the plan. I have here also with us Mark Reinhardt, the water service manager, and also Robert Howard, the deputy for operation and maintenance, to help us with any question what you might have.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Matt Zucca. I'm with Erler and Kalinowski. As Clara mentioned, you all have received a copy of the public review draft of the Urban Water Management Plan. The information that I'm going to go through tonight in this presentation, I will go through fairly quickly. All the information here is contained in the document, so this is really for the benefit of summarizing everything for the public in advance of the public hearing. As an executive summary to the information in the document and in the presentation, basically San Bruno has adequate water through the combination of surface water and groundwater to meet the anticipated growth through the planning horizon of the document, which is 2035. You have already achieved your urban water use targets, which are required by state law for the year 2020. And I'll talk in more detail about that, but those have already been met. But even though you are already at your targets, the document does show how San Bruno continues to implement water conservation measures. So that's sort of in a nutshell what I'll be talking about in a little bit more detail. The Urban Water Management Planning Act, as an outline, I'll give you a little bit of information on that, some background information regarding the city, the key of the Urban Water Management Plan, which is the water supply and demand forecasts, talk a little bit about the drought water supplies, the Water Conservation Act of 2009, you might have heard of, it's 20 by 2020, or SB 7, a little bit about water conservation, and then also a little bit about the shortage contingency plans that are in place. Basically, first and foremost, the Urban Water Management Planning Act is a law. It outlines how the city is going to meet your demands over a 20-year horizon. Typically, we did 25 in this document, and it forms the basis for your water supply assessments that you might do in support of any future growth. This would be the reliance document that they would rely on, and it's required to be updated every 5 years.
I'm here.
The Act requires that we look at water demand, that we compare that to supplies, that to the extent that it's relevant, look at groundwater and recycled water, talk about the the reliability in the event of a drought. Again, look at the shortage contingency planning and the catastrophic interruption of supply. So these are actually requirements that we have to address in the document. Additionally, since the passage of the Act, the Water Conservation Act of 2009 requires that each agency effectively reduce your per capita consumption by 20% by the year 2020. And again, I'll talk about how you've actually already met that target. As I'm sure you already know, the water supply agreement that you have with San Francisco is governed by an agreement that was entered into in July 2009. It provides for 184 million gallons per day for the San Francisco's wholesale customers. Excuse me. The normal water supply for San Bruno is guaranteed at 3.25 million gallons per day. That's normal year. It's subject to reduction in droughts in cases of emergency or whatever. There are other portions of the agreement that govern those, but in a normal year, that is your supply guarantee. Your interim supply allocation is valid through 2018. It's at a reduced level, but it doesn't affect your guarantee. This is really a consumption above which you might pay an incremental rate. But in no way does it affect your actual guarantee. It's an interim allocation, effectively. And it is, like I said, it is technically valid through 2018. A little bit about the baseline information that we relied on for developing the Urban Water Management Plan. Several sources of both growth for population and employment, including ABAG, your general plan, plus some specific plans regarding the transit corridor were all looked at. And as you can see, growth is happening and our water demands are going to move commensurately with that. Pie charts regarding the connections by category. A connection is any metered connection to the water system. As you can see, in 2009 and 2010, approximately 85% of your connections are single-family residential, with approximately 7% being multifamily. And for 2034, 2035, we don't expect a huge shift in the actual connections. Comparing that to consumption, however, you'll see that on a total, you have 53% consumption for residential single-family, 24% for multifamily, and your commercial, although it makes up a small number of connections, is actually a substantial amount of consumption. This is in 2009, 2010. Historical distribution of water, a lot of numbers here. Really the main focus that you should look at is that there is a trend in the last few years that we believe is largely associated with the economic downturn. This trend is followed on the blue line by all the BOSCO agencies. This is the aggregate amount consumed. So what we're seeing trend-wise over the last few years is consistent with other agencies. We do, however, expect that there might be a rebound effect on these water demands as the economy recovers. So the most recent data don't necessarily indicate what the near-term consumption could be. And this is a slide showing your, over the same 5-year look back, what you've used in terms of your San Francisco purchases, which are in the blue on the top of the bar column, and then your groundwater production on the bottom. You do purchase a small amount of retail water from the North Coast County Water District, but as you can see, it's a very small percentage. Overall, historically, you've been about 50-50 groundwater, surface water, with a slightly higher production in groundwater in the last year. This aerial shows basically the extent of the groundwater basin that you draw from. The airport is located right here. These blue lines represent basically the depth from surface to the bottom of your water-bearing layer. So this is the depth of the aquifer, if you will. So we're dealing here in feet below ground surface. And you can see this is about a 600-foot contour line, and when you get south towards Burlingame, you're in 200 feet of depth. So really, San Bruno is sort of overlying some of the deeper parts of the aquifer with what we call a bedrock high that exists right in sort of the Millbrae area, just to give you a sense of what the aquifer looks like. And the way groundwater flows up in the city, Sunset area, it flows out to the ocean. There's a divide here where it starts flowing south towards San Bruno. In San Bruno, it represents sort of the low spot of the basin, and then it flows north from Burlingame towards the wells here. So that's sort of how the groundwater basin works in the city.
Does the low spot mean the deepest spot?
Low spot, not necessarily. San Bruno does tend to have some of the deeper areas, but if you think about it, the low spot could be just the water table depressed. They're two separate issues. You know, there's two separate factors. So the low spot is really more associated with where the pumping and where the water table, the shape of the upper water table, if you will. It just happens to also coincide with where the deeper parts of the aquifer are. There is a regional conjunctive use, and conjunctive use is any combination of surface water and groundwater. An evaluation was done back in the early 2000 timeframe where several agencies participated. And what was done is that the surface water, and this represents pumping of groundwater, San Bruno and some of the other cities, was banked up over a series of years to see how that might accumulate and how cities might go off of surface water and onto groundwater and use this banked up water during dry years. That was an evaluation that was done, and the city is undergoing discussions right now on that front. This is sort of a little bit of a repeat, but this is your 5-year look back on your groundwater production. Again, relatively constant, a little bit higher over 2009, 2010. Bringing these two together, water demand and supply. So your lookout for your demand is 5.13 within the plant, MGD, million gallons per day. This is on an annual average, so you take total consumption divided by the number of days in the year. And 2035 is 5.13, broken out by category. So your residential, CII is commercial, industrial, institutional. So again, predominantly a residential demand. Your supply basically is a combination of your surface water from San Francisco, your groundwater, future groundwater that you plan on pumping, and then your North Coast purchases as well. So when you bring those two together, it looks like this. The bar charts being your supply, the line being your demand, and as you can see, the 5.13 falls within the available supply. Yes.
What do you project the population being at 2034?
There are several projections. We relied on, I looked at a combination of them. ABAG 2009, there's also the general plan growth, and then there are, we use for our population projections the ABAG 2009, and primarily because the population then sort of drives the water demand. So for us, it's about the water. And we also did look at, we also did look at the population that would be developed by the transit corridor as well as the commercial, and compared that to the two to make sure that we were within the land use projections for that as well.
Do we have a number? Is it?
Yes. Let me get you that.
55,000?
It was right at the beginning.
Yeah, because I just recall that in the staff report it only went up to 2025. And
so here what you'll see is that this blue line is the ABAG going out to 2035. These dots represent basically, as you pointed out, singular points. So this blue dot is the employment with the general plan plus the transit corridor plan. And then the purple dot would be the population with a general plan plus a transit corridor plan. So we looked at all of these and trying to figure out how it affected our water demands. Does that make sense? Excuse me for jumping ahead now.
Did you want to start over?
Dry year water supply. We are required by the Act to look at water supply during normal, single dry, and multiple dry years. Basically, there are two ways that this is accounted for here. There's a plan between San Francisco and the retail agencies that divides up the available water. Between San Francisco and Bosqua, which is the representative agency for San Bruno. And then amongst the Bosqua agencies, there's a Tier 2 plan. And you guys, I think, recently saw the Tier 2 plan. It has been adopted by all of the wholesale agencies, including San Bruno. There's a complicated formula that's explained on the slide, and I'm not going to go through it, but just to show that it is a relatively significant spreadsheet that's involved in calculating what your allocations are during a dry year. And this is basically what a 3-year look ahead would look like if you were to start today and have a dry year going forward into a 3-year dry year period, where this was your 2009-2010 demand. You could conceivably, if you look at the historical climate record, potentially the amount of surface water could be reduced, and if you assumed a small decrease in groundwater production, your 3rd year would be out at 3.85. That's less than your current, that's more than your current demand. So, a 3-year look ahead shows that you have enough water currently, even assuming a small decrease in groundwater production. We also looked as part of this urban water management plan at the potential participation, or not participation actually, of an individual conjunctive use, which is rather than regionalizing conjunctive use, across multiple cities, is that San Bruno could individually look at during dry years, purchasing more surface water and allowing the groundwater table to recover, so that during normal years, so that during dry years you could increase pumping and be less reliant on the surface water that was provided by San Francisco. Or actually, thank you, you could do it at the same time. There's no, evaluating both individual and regional conjunctive use could both be done. They're not mutually exclusive whatsoever. What's shown here is just an example of what a conjunctive use program might look like. These are done in years 2031 through 2035. And as you can see here, in the first 4 years, we are using the maximum of surface water and making up what we can with groundwater. And then assuming that we have a dry year, we would make up basically the delta between the available surface water supplies and our demand with groundwater. And this black line represents sort of the accumulated amount of water that you didn't use. And so in that single dry year, you would see that you would have still some surplus water left over on a sort of banked basis that you could potentially use into the following year. So this is something that's considered in the document as well. Senate Bill 7, I talked a little bit about this. This is the 20 by 2020, where you're required to reduce per capita demand by 20%. You can comply individually or as a region. Some people are going to be looking to comply regionally. And non-compliance is really a loss of access to grants or water loans. That's sort of the consequence of it. But to give you a sense of where San Bruno is, this is the water consumption going back to 95, 96 through last year. And if you look at your 5-year baseline, it's 89 gallons per capita per day. Your 10-year baseline is 95 gallons per capita per day. And basically, your water use target, target usage would be 124. You're effectively below that, and in particular, you're even below the 100 gallon per capita per day threshold, which means that you have to do effectively to comply with this act nothing. If you were above 100, you would still have to cut back a minimum of 5%, but because your per capita demand is so low, the law says that San Bruno has effectively met its 2020 per capita targets already.
So do we get any kind of credit for that going down the road?
There are people that are going to want to knock on your door about teaming and that regional compliance, and so that's a possibility.
So we can pound on the team.
Exactly.
What do you attribute that to?
It's a combination of factors. Some of the local agencies that microclimate is one. Potentially smaller lot size is another aspect of it. Also, when you look at other communities like Burlingame, where they have a large hotel population, that's a transient community. They get all the water demand, but no population credit for that. And the demographics and the way the water demand is broken out in the city of San Bruno is different. So many communities that don't have a lot of that transient demand benefit in this regulation because they have the way it's total consumption divided by total population.
And I might add, probably the city of San Bruno was very effective on implementing certain water conservation measures, and this was very important for the city council in the last few years. And the council took a very aggressive role making those conservation strategies to happen.
Okay, so these are the what we call best management practices, demand management measures that the city implements. We're required by the Act to describe, and they're described in detail in the document, what the city currently does. Out of the 14, 13 of the 14 are being implemented, and the 14th really relates to if you're selling water to another retail agency, so it doesn't apply. So to Clara's comment regarding conservation, the city is participating in one form or another in all of these various programs. The catastrophic interruption of supply, several things have been done, obviously. You've all heard about the capital improvements program that San Francisco has put in place. They're multi-billion-dollar. That is obviously intended to increase the reliability of the regional system. But San Francisco, San Mateo County, and the City of San Bruno all have emergency response plans in terms of how to address an interruption in the supply to the region of water. So all those documents are in place and have been shared. In the event of either a drought or a catastrophic or significant reduction, here are what we call sort of the stages of action. The Act requires that we look at several up to 50%. Stage 1 we call sort of the voluntary stage, which is up to 10%. And they really are more public education oriented, bill inserts and more messaging related to asking for voluntary cutbacks. When you go to stage 2, at the upper end, you would start considering mandatory cutbacks, mandatory conservation measures, because 20% is fairly substantial cutback. Upwards of 35, you would continue to implement mandatory and then further enforce them, potentially look at rate changes and other financial disincentives for water consumption in excess of maybe certain allotments. And then you would more aggressively monitor for compliance. And then that basically just gets increased further when you go to stage 5, where you're really now starting to focus on any outdoor irrigation would effectively not be used, and you would be more trying to protect basic human services and needs for water. And in a very quick summary nutshell, I have summarized that 2-inch document in front of you. If you have any questions.
That's great.
Any questions of staff at this time, of the consultant? Irene?
I don't have any questions per se, but I'd like to make a couple comments. If anyone is interested in our water system, this is a fabulous document. The mapping and the explanation of what we've done and what needs to be done to keep our water system whole and viable is all in here. So if you have a boring Saturday night, I recommend it, or you can't fall asleep, you can do that. I just have a comment that I want to kind of enlighten the council about, or bring it up on the page 72 of the agenda packet. There's a comment about water supply alternatives, that it is not imperative that San Bruno look to alternatives because we will be able to make our water we'll have enough water basically up to the year 2035. And while that is true, and I hope it stays that way, I hope none of our groundwater gets contaminated, I hope none of those horrible things that could happen do happen. Bosqua as a region is looking at alternate water supplies, either regionally, 2 or 3 cities together, however we're doing it. So we're doing a huge study on what's out there, what could be built, what could be negotiated, what could be saved, all those kinds of things. The preliminary reports from that will be coming out this summer. So those are some of the questions and procedures from that will be coming back to the council. Do we, even though we may not need the water, or we may not need it in the next 10 years or 15 years, we might look at participating to some extent in some of the regional efforts, kind of to safeguard our supply of water in case our groundwater fails, or a percentage of it. So I just want to put those in the minutes that we need to look at that going forward, or we will be looking at that going forward.
Good. Anyone else? All right.
Through the chair.
Yes, Rico.
I've tried to go through this, and obviously I appreciate your presentation. So, not to take up the whole night with this.
Thank you.
I thought you would appreciate that, because I have quite a few little side notes here, but maybe I can collaborate with staff, go over these, and they can, if that's all right with the council, and they can come back.
We weren't doing anything Saturday night.
No, I didn't think so at all either. But I think just to help me understand, and maybe others too, if we could help appreciate what technical
evaluation had to come together to get this data. I know you worked on it before, and what we have now, where that comes, and what really it took to put this document together, and the data that's received that's making these projections out to the future.
Sure. So,
Please.
would you like me to read it? Okay. There's quite a bit of data, and there's actually some fairly intensive modeling that's done for the water supply projections. First and foremost, we look at the historical consumption data that the city maintains through the billing system, and to the extent that we have detail in there, we try to look at the trends and the patterns of what's happened historically, and then rely on other sources of information, specifically the city's general plan, any kind of population and employment forecasts, as well as the reliability, if you will, and information that's provided to us by San Francisco regarding the reliability of the water supply. We also look at the draft groundwater management plan that's currently in process. A lot of this information basically goes into a sophisticated groundwater spreadsheet, if you will, water demand modeling spreadsheet that was put together by BOSQA on behalf of the 26 retail agencies recently. And it includes assumptions regarding the effects of conservation, such as toilet changeouts. It includes the effect of other conservation measures as well. So it's looking at a combination of increased population as well as how the plumbing code over time is affecting the demands. Because as you change out toilets, just because you add an additional person doesn't mean that you get the same amount of incremental demand. So the model itself tries to take all those factors into account in terms of how we project the actual consumption, and it's based upon the historical as well. Then again, the reliability aspect of it is somewhat different, and we rely on San Francisco's information, and we rely on information related to the groundwater management plan in terms of supply reliability. So if that answers your question.
Thank you. And we do, maybe to staff, do we still have the saltwater monitoring? Are we still doing that? Intrusion? Okay.
Intrusion.
And then, what type of conservation programs are we looking forward to? Obviously, it's been noted that we've done pretty good. It's been noted that we're using less than when we look back in 2005, for example. But what do we have on the horizon as far as to continue on the path that we've already been successful on?
Like another 20%.
In addition to all of the conservation programs already implemented until now, the Grass to Be Gone is one of the pilot projects, but the city very successfully took on, and actually leading BOSQA agencies with this pilot project to really even further minimize the water use for irrigation. Also had many educational classes educating the public how they can further reduce their water consumption for irrigation. Also, as part of our and I know that the city manager wants to jump in also, and I will let her, and maybe Mark Reinhardt want to add something else also. And as you recall, the standards for development, the guidelines were just approved a few months ago by you. Those new development standards included many of these water conservation expectations also.
I just wanted to clarify, I didn't understand when the director first identified the Grass Be Gone program. I wanted to clarify that that was a landscape renovation project and program that we're doing in conjunction with a variety of other native plant landscaping and drought-tolerant plant landscaping programs that have been implemented in San Bruno to tremendous reception by the public. We have as many as 60 people in our classes that are co-sponsored by us and by BOSQA. In addition to that, our zoning ordinance, so the director mentioned a number of projects in addition to the long-standing the washing machine and low flow toilet rebate programs that we implement, again, in coordination with VASCA. In addition to that, our updated zoning ordinance will look at a variety of different sustainability initiatives that might be incorporated in our zoning code to facilitate what the director was talking about in terms of building standards and other types of items where we can be reasonably aggressive in terms of water conservation. And again, following up on EKI's comment earlier, the city has demonstrated leadership for many years and continues to produce very good results that are reflected in the plan.
Through the chair.
Yeah, Irene?
Thank you. And Bosqua is always thinking of new ways to conserve water and to develop programs in conjunction with not just one city, but regionally. So we'll bring you back more things as we think them up. I think the other thing people need to remember is much of the single-family resident consumption of water isn't the shower and the washing machine and all those stuff. It's the lawns. So as we do the new developments, as we do infill development type things with high rises and high development, high density, you don't have lawns. So a lot of, though our population will grow, we won't add lawn, and that's where a lot of the water consumption is. So that's a conservation right there.
Okay. Any questions of staff or consultants? All right, this time we'll open the public hearing. Would anyone in the public like to address the council on this issue? If we close the public hearing, you're precluded from discussing this with us any further. Action?
Move to close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion second to close public hearing. On the question? Those in favor?
Aye.
So carried. All right. There's no action tonight on this item, so thank you for the report. Very, very thorough. Item number 9, public comment on items not on the agenda. It is the council's policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and/or action where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. Would anyone in the audience like to address the council on public comment? All right, seeing no one, we'll move right on to conduct of business. First item is A, adopt a resolution approving the City of San Bruno investment policy and receive quarterly investment report from the city treasurer. Mr. Marty.
Honorable Mayor and members of City Council. The city investment policy must be presented to the council for adoption each year at a public meeting. I'll start over. Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. The city's investment policy must be presented to the council for adoption each year at a public meeting. No changes have been made to the investment strategy adopted January 12, 2010. In response to the fiscal year 2009-2010 year-end audit that indicated a conflict between the city's investment policy and the deposits from the San Mateo County pool, the city has initiated the process for an electronic funds transfer to the main checking account for all funds that were previously credited to its main checking account. By doing so, the city has strengthened its ability to monitor and remain in compliance with the investment policy statement. Furthermore, this electronic funds transfer enables the city to become more efficient and timely in allocating its assets. The County Treasurer's Office estimates this process to be in place by June 30th of this year. During the first quarter of 2011, the city actively managed its investment portfolio as several bond issues matured. At quarter end, the city held the following: $15.7 million in the San Mateo County pool, $13.1 million in the local agency investment fund handled by the State Treasurer's Office, $3 million also in the local agency investment fund held in trust for the Glenview fire victims, and $10 million in federal government bonds held in trust at Union Bank. With respect to the Lehman Brothers collapse, the bankruptcy proceedings are nearing an end. On June 30th, the bankruptcy judge will rule as to the final plan for the creditors. The expectation is each creditor will receive 30 cents on the dollar, with the distribution to occur sometime in the third quarter this year. In the wake of this Lehman issue, the City Council asked to have an investment report at each quarter end, in large part to report on the progress of the bankruptcy proceedings. Since this issue is near completion, the Treasurer's Office recommends discontinuing this report. The Treasurer will, of course, report on any and all material issues relating to any of the city's investment accounts. At this point, I would like to offer clarifying language to our investment policy that is meant to formalize what, in fact, is already occurring. I would like to direct your attention to section 2, entitled Implementation, the first paragraph on page 2, which discusses the appointment of a deputy city treasurer. I would suggest eliminating that paragraph in its entirety and replacing it with the following. I do believe you have a copy of the suggested language. I'll read it aloud. In the event the treasurer is unable to perform his or her duties, the city's finance director will serve as interim treasurer until the city council is able to take the necessary action to fill this position. As I mentioned a moment ago, this is meant to clarify what in fact has taken place. On every single account, checking account, investment account, the finance director is a signatory on it, as well as I, and also the deputy city finance director is already on the accounts as well. So, in fact, if I am unable to perform my duties, the finance director has in fact already the authority to act to handle any of the city funds. So I would respectfully request that, again, that first paragraph on page 2 be eliminated, and in its stead, this paragraph inserted.
Okay. Anything else, John?
No, that is all.
Just as a point of clarification, maybe the city manager can clarify this for us. When you mentioned you had $3 million in the fund for the Glenview victims, I believe it was unrestricted for city use regarding the fire. I want to make sure it's clarified.
You are correct, Mr. Mayor. That is an unrestricted contribution that the city received in September, shortly after the Glenview fire incident. From PG&E, those funds are unrestricted as to their use, and in fact, they were intended, when they were delivered to us by the corporate executives of PG&E, they were intended to be used for city-related purposes, for costs associated with the city's business and operations related to the incident. They are otherwise undesignated, have not been used, as the treasurer has indicated, are on deposit in an investment account, and at this particular moment in time have no immediate planned or intended use. But given the extraordinary impact on the city across its operational program, it is expected that at some point those funds may be needed for a purpose for which they were intended.
All right, thank you. Any questions of our city treasurer? Yes.
I would concur with the cleanup language that Mr. Marty has recommended. And I would also concur with the treasurer in regards to the quarterly coming back, because Lehman Brothers situation is pretty well resolved. Not to all that we would love, but it's the reality of what is. But I also, periodically, and I don't know what periodically may be, but it would be nice to also hear some food for thought, investment opportunity, what the market is seeing in the yield rate or performance, the city's cash flow. Things like that I think are important for us still to be engaged with, and you obviously see that on a daily basis, and I think it never hurts us to kind of be up to date on what you see happening out there.
Anything else for the treasurer?
Chair?
Michael?
In regards to the two primary pools that the funds are invested in, the Local Agency Investment Fund and the San Mateo County pool, what do we know about what's contained in each of those funds, and are they different enough where we're actually where we have enough diversity, or are those two essentially the same types of investments?
No, the San Mateo County pool holds approximately 350 different issues. The entire size of the fund is about $3 billion. It holds anything from CDs from various banks, not restricted to California, but nationwide. You have U.S. Treasuries, you have agency paper, Federal Home Loan Bank, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation. You have medium-term notes up to 7-10 years. In addition, you do have some corporate, investment-grade corporate securities in there, some of which are part of the Treasury Guarantee Program. So they have, in essence, federal backing. LAIF has a lot more concentration on state debt, California obligations, general obligation bonds. They hold some securities issued by various municipalities within the state. So if you look at the portfolios in general, you can think of LAIF more California-centric. The county pool is much more heavily weighted in the federal government side.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? This is an action item. Someone like to take an action?
I'll introduce the resolution for adoption
With the
with the changes stated.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item 10B, adopt a resolution approving the facility update plan for the South San Francisco-San Bruno Water Quality Control Plant.
For our sewer system.
Start over.
As you are very well aware, the city owns and operates with City of South San Francisco our sewer treatment plant. The plant is owned jointly by City of San Bruno and South San Francisco, and the plant is operated by the City of South San Francisco. In order for us to assure the reliability of our treatment plant and also to meet the expectation of the set expectation by the regional board, jointly with South City, a consultant was hired, Corolla Engineering, to develop a long-term facility plan. That's the plan that will be presented to you for your consideration tonight. This facility plan was presented previously to a joint utility subcommittee meeting between City of San Bruno and South City, to our utility subcommittee, and also was a joint study session with the same presentation between the two legislative bodies, San Bruno and City of South San Francisco. What is the intent tonight to present to you the facility plan and to seek your approval for the plan. You have before you a slightly modified resolution. The difference between the change in the resolution just clarifying the intent that what you will approve, the request tonight for you to approve the facility plan, and that staff will come back as a follow-up action with a detailed cost allocation for specific project, and before inclusion of those costs in our CIP, and to allocate cost for those projects. I have here Terry White, the Public Works Director for South City, and Mike Britton from Corolla, and Lydia Holmes, who will take you through the facility plan itself.
Thank you. Good evening. All right, so the facility plan that we were hired to perform for the two cities covered three major areas: critical reliability improvements and rehab of aging facilities at the plant. Then we also needed to address the State Water Board's discharge permit compliance mandates to control wet weather flow discharges. And then we also were asked to consider green energy opportunities. So I'm going to step you through our major findings for each one of these key areas. So starting with critical reliability and replacement projects, what we found is that we needed to do some work on the digesters and their support facilities. These are facilities that handle the solids, and they are between 40 and 60 years old, these three digesters. There's an emergency generator. This is when there's a power outage, they need to have emergency power, and it's not been always reliable when that power goes out. There's some electrical system safety improvements that are required, seismic improvements to a blower building, and headworks and stormwater improvements. So these are all the major findings that we found on needing to do some reliability and replacement projects. So moving on to the permit, the treatment plant currently discharges the treated effluent at two locations depending on rainfall. So down here in the left corner you see the plant, you can see the tanks here. So during dry weather, the discharge is of secondary effluent to San Francisco Bay. During wet weather, the plant is allowed to discharge a combination of primary and secondary effluent to the bay, and this primary and secondary is in reference to level of treatment. So during wet weather, it is a lower level of treatment that is being discharged because there's so much wet weather that comes into the plant gets overwhelmed and doesn't have the capacity to discharge all secondary treated. During extreme wet weather discharge events, they need to discharge to Colma Creek, which you can see right here adjacent to the plant. This happens when the outfall that you can see goes up and over to the bay. When that capacity is exceeded, then they have if more water is coming into the plant than that outfall capacity, then that's when it triggers a discharge to the creek. So the State Water Board discharge permit has some mandates in it. In 2008, the plant received a new permit which required controlling wet weather flow discharges in two different parts. They wanted to have minimizing blending of the primary and secondary treated wastewater, which is what I referred to, the two different levels of treatment. And this is a national policy that's being pushed actually to minimize blending. And then the second thing was they wanted to eliminate those near-shore discharges to Colma Creek. So for this project, we were tasked with looking at what are the projects that would be needed to minimize the blending and eliminate the Colma Creek discharge. So this shows a close-up of the treatment plant. And so the first project to minimize blending would be to improve and increase the secondary treatment capacity. And we're showing here that we would be doing modifications to their aeration basins, which are the primary way you do secondary treatment, and adding a new secondary clarifier to increase that secondary treatment capacity. The next project would be to see if we can obtain a permit for that near-shore discharge. The reason they are saying you have to eliminate the discharge is because it's not currently permitted. So we would have to go through the steps of working with the regulators to get an authorized permit, which would require some water quality studies and dilution studies in the creek. Then the third project would be to build a new wet weather storage facility to be able to hold the water if we aren't allowed to discharge to Colma Creek. As I mentioned, when the water coming into the plant is more than that outfall capacity, you'd have to store it. This project would be as a last resort if we cannot succeed in getting a new discharge permit for the occasional discharges to Colma Creek. Okay, so moving on to the third area of our plan, on green energy. The plant already produces about 1/3 of its own power demand with biogas that's produced on site from the solids, and it's taken through engines. So this graph shows that right now the engines produce 400 kilowatts of the 1,100 that are required to run the plant. We considered different options for green energy, and what we recommended for the 5-year CIP was a solar project of 150 kilowatts by putting solar panels basically on the existing buildings, and that's what's shown here. Okay, so the summary of all the projects that we've come up with, we're showing here broken into the 3 categories of critical rehabilitation, discharge permit, and green energy. And we've broken it into what we recommended for the 5-year CIP versus a longer term. So for the critical rehabilitation, we're showing over $11 million of projects that need to be done in the next 5 years, and we have deferred an additional nearly $16 million. For the discharge permit compliance, we're showing $9.6 million in the next 5 years to improve that secondary treatment capacity that I mentioned, and to try to get a new permit for the Colma Creek discharge. We are deferring that wet weather storage basin out beyond the 5-year CIP, as you see here, to try to provide time so that we can see if we can get that discharge permit. For the green energy opportunities, while there were some very interesting ideas to and promising technologies to produce more power on site, for the fuel cell, it comes at a much higher cost, so we have deferred that and instead went with the lower cost solar panels at this point. So we're showing a $22.6 million 5-year CIP for the plant. The next steps are to have City Council approval. South San Francisco has already approved the facility plan. Then the projects need to be incorporated into the city's CIPs. We need to meet with the regional board to talk about the permit issues and the plan, and then staff would need to move forward with implementing these projects. And with that, I'm ready to take any questions
Good.
you may have.
Any questions? Irene?
Chair, the cost, could you go back to the cost? Thank you. You're showing the cost for everything, not our share.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, just to clarify.
Anyone else? Okay. And our percentage share is?
And that's what I indicated in my remarks, that it's our intent to come back with a presentation showing you exactly our participation in each of those projects.
Okay. Action?
Through the chair,
Michael.
we get a little clarification on what exactly we're approving then today? Is it just we're approving the overall concept, but not committing any funds?
What you are approving tonight is the facility plan itself, with how to approve the cost sharing percentages or agreement for any of these projects.
So we're approving solar, for instance. You gave us some options, and we're...
For the solar, can be reach the agreement if, depending on your desire and comfort level, how much participation you want to have for that project, and how soon, if will be no clear agreement between your direction and City of South San Francisco intend to implement some of those green energy projects sooner than how soon is your desire to implement, then they can fund entirely themselves without any cost sharing by us, or whatever percentage you will feel comfortable agreeing to participate in that project. That
So-
certainly would not be the case for critical rehabilitation project, which pretty much are absolutely needed in investment, and that would be a requirement for us to share the cost. But the green energy investment is a opportunity investment and is a policy choice to be made.
Okay. Ken?
So I did key in on that one paragraph near the end of the staff report, and I'm sure that this plan was developed knowing what our rate structure was and what kind of funding you can get, for capital projects. So it says in 2009, we adopted our latest rate model. And the key part of this states that it is not expected to significantly impact the rate model. So what can you tell me about that?
You are absolutely correct. At the time when our rate model and our 10-year financial projection was developed for our sewer sanitary fund, both cities were aware of the need of this improvement, not knowing exactly what kind of improvement needs to be done. Reason why at that time both of us agreed to start to develop this facility plan to define exactly what improvements will need to happen in the same time was a so-called placeholder placed in our rate model. And the placeholder is very close to the final possible cost share what the city of San Bruno will have to pay for this investment.
So again, just to summarize, this proposal of the 5-year CIP, and then what's the bigger chunk beyond, based on our rate structure for the next 5 years.
Would support you, but I will remind you that the financial projection was for 10 years, and you approved a rate structure for 3 years, and that will be up next year for further decision. But yes, in our 10-year rate model, this cost was anticipated and was included in our rate model.
Get there. Thank you.
One more question. I've heard this presentation, I think, 4 or 5 times now, so slowly it's seeping in. But, one thing I was thinking about, Clara, I think you explained to me that the reason we have these overflows or this overcapacity is because our sewer systems are essentially broken, and so when it rains, water gets into the ground, and that gets into the sewer system and ends up at the facility. Is that fairly accurate?
I hope I didn't say that our sewer system is broken. I wouldn't say that. That certainly is with many of older sewer system, is a challenge, the difference between dry weather flow and wet weather flow. During a high rain event, the infiltration is still very high in our system. It's not isolated enough. All of the pipes in the ground, they are not really, they will let the rainwater to infiltrate, and then our system then has to carry a much higher volume to the treatment plant. And that's, you see from, for those improvements recommended for permit compliance, those are really focused on wet weather compliance, that during the peak rain event, how then that increased demand can be managed without to discharge any pollutant to the bay from the plant as much as possible.
And so what I was really thinking is, here we have a system that where perhaps if we invested the money instead in repairing everything that's in the ground now, we wouldn't have nearly the demand at the treatment plant because the water wouldn't be getting in there. And probably this investment is very modest compared to what it would take to do that. But it's still, I'm wondering, you know, if we were to divert some of these funds toward that project, which I think ultimately we do want to do anyway, you know, are we talking about something that would just be so, the horizon would be so far out that we would absolutely want to do this and not even consider that as a second alternative?
Yeah. Council member, you were not here and you had you didn't have the benefit being part of the discussion for the 10-year financial model for the sewer system. Was a certain level of service agreed on as part of the policy assumption developing that model, and one of the policy assumption on which our 10-year plan was based was replacing in a timely manner our system, our sewer mains. But of course, the system is is older than 60-year-old. Then will take us at least many years to be able to do that. And the short answer to your question, you have to do both to a certain degree to be able to really manage the environmental protection in meantime until you will be able to improve our system to a level when that will make a big difference, and weather flow will be lowered substantially enough that you will not need any major capacity improvement down at the plant. The same policy was, and I don't want to speak in South San Francisco's name, but they made pretty much the same policy decision a few years back, and they started to invest in their sewer main replacement to minimize their I&I. And that is our intent, and that is in our plan also, to minimize I&I, to replace our system in a reasonable pace that you cannot just replace in 2 years or 3 years out of our system. Is not practically possible financially and even from a practical reason.
Okay. It seems like lately a lot of people have taken an interest in our sewer system, so I was making sure that the priorities hadn't changed any. But thank you.
Well, if I could add to that, and that is another reason that it's absolutely imperative that, in addition to this reason, that we take the necessary actions to improve our collection system to our best ability. But I did, while Clara was talking, I did confirm with the consultant that, in fact, the analysis does take into consideration the scheduled improvements in the system. So you're not duplicating in the near term. You are doing what needs to be done at the plant, and you're doing what needs to be done in the collection system. And hopefully over, as the director indicated, over what will probably be a fairly long period of time, but incrementally move to a point where you're capturing hopefully as much as, or avoiding as much as possible I&I, and then allowing the sustained efficient operations of the plant once improved.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of a two-pronged approach, and you know, I've been on this council a long time. We actually bit the bullet along with South San Francisco to do it that way. We made some major improvements to the plant not too many years ago. Here come additional improvements, but in the meantime, alongside of that, we're trying to improve our infrastructure, because the worst thing is to treat rainwater, and that's what we're trying to do here, is increase capacity so that we can bypass some of those problems we've been having. It's going to take a lot longer to do the stuff under the street, and take a lot more money to do it than it will be to, in fact, improve capacity and improve the electricity usage at the plant. So I think we're on the right track. We bit the bullet a long time ago, and it actually increased rates with a lot of criticism, but it's a real good thing we did. So anything else?
Just quickly, are we clear of the cease and desist order or are we just involved in improvements that are satisfying that?
This was to develop the facility plan was the requirement of the 2008 permit issued by the regional board.
But the plant is not under a cease and desist
No.
right now.
This was a requirement expectation included in the 2008 permit for the plant.
Okay. Any action?
I'll introduce the resolution for adoption.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item 10C, adopt a resolution approving cable television services and rates effective July 1st, 2011.
Honorable Mayor, members of City Council, good evening. Tenzin Gelson, Cable Television Director. As part of the annual budget development process, staff reviewed programming contracts and other operating costs for changes, and in consultation with the City Council Cable Television Subcommittee has developed a service and rate adjustment proposal for your consideration and adoption this evening. The city's programming costs increased by over 15% last year, mainly due to steep license fee increases implemented by Comcast Sportsnet. And the city implemented a 14.86% rate increase to cover those costs. Programming costs are increasing again this year by over 6%, which is much lower than last year, but still a large increase nonetheless. While there is a need to fully recover cost increases by passing it on as a rate adjustment, the city is sensitive to the impact a 6% plus rate increase may have on customer sentiment in this highly competitive environment. But San Bruno residents have a choice of service providers for their video service today. Also, given the depressed state of the economy, customers are switching back and forth between service providers to take advantage of promotional offers to save money. To address this shift in customer behavior and to compete effectively in this new environment, the City Council recently approved an expanded promotional campaign to attract new customers and to stabilize the city's market share. The first postcard mailer of this campaign was delivered to prospective customers this last Friday and has begun to generate new customers already. Given the heightened level of competition, every service provider's customer base is comprised of two groups, customers with the company's standard rates and a group of customers that has the company's promotional rates. Although it appears to us that the competing service providers have only a discounted promotional rate, as they do a great job of promoting it, they also have an established standard schedule of services and rates generally. When a promotional period expires, the customer's rate changes to the company's standard rate. If the customer signed a service contract, then the customer has to stay and pay the standard rate through the contract term or face a penalty. Similarly, the city has a standard schedule of services and rates, which the city annually adjusts and maintains to cover operating costs and to ensure the continued viability of the enterprise. The city also has promotional rates to attract new customers, and when these promotional periods expire, the city's standard rates apply. So a company's promotional rate is not extended to existing customers and should not be interpreted as the standard rate. The recent past has been challenging, and the days ahead, no doubt, will continue to be challenging as jostling for market share continues. The city lost nearly 800 basic cable customers during the fiscal year due to increased competition and generally depressed economic climate. This is a phenomenon that is being experienced by the entire cable industry. According to the National Cable Television Association, the basic cable video penetration of homes passed for the industry has declined to 46.5%. Although the city's basic cable penetration to homes passed is declining, it still has a penetration of nearly 51%, which is slightly better than the industry average. The city recognizes the impact of this negative trend and will continue to take steps to maintain its competitiveness. As previously directed by City Council, beginning July 2011, the city will offer free pay-per-view coupons on a quarterly basis, a 5 to 10% discount for advance payment, and a refer a friend discount program to reward customer loyalty. And as the City Council is aware, the city's service rates continue to be at the lower end of the scale in comparison to the industry, which is Comcast and Astound in our market, and comparable to competitors in the market as well, which is AT&T and satellite providers. Even though a direct product comparison to competitors cannot be made because of the way the products are packaged, the rates for comparative products are reasonably close. In addition to low a la carte rates, the low a la carte rates, and the city offers a wide choice of deeply discounted video and multi-product bundle packages. Since the city does not require a contract, customers are free to upgrade and downgrade their service anytime. The city also offers free service calls to all its customers. These are added values that are not offered by other competing service providers. The challenge faced by staff and the cable subcommittee, consisting of Mayor Ruane and Councilmember O'Connell, in developing the recommended service and rate adjustment proposal before you this evening, was balancing the need to cover rising costs while preventing negative customer sentiment in this competitive environment. After deliberating on alternatives, including foregoing a basic cable rate altogether and implementing a lesser rate increase, the subcommittee advised staff to scale back the rate increase to a reasonable level that would strike a balance between the two equally important concerns. As such, staff developed a rate adjustment of $3.04 or 5% on basic cable service. The proposed basic cable increase, coupled with other adjustments to digital cable, premium services, and internet service as described in your report, is valued at approximately $626,000 in additional revenue. If the proposed service and rate increase are approved, the additional revenue will only partially cover increases in programming costs and leave a budget gap of $112,000. This revenue shortfall will add to the existing cable fund deficit. The Cable Subcommittee recommends City Council approval of the proposed services and the rate adjustments. Following City Council action, the rate increase will take effect July 1, 2011, and as required by municipal code and federal regulations, staff will notify customers through a bill insert in their June billing statement, and additionally post notices on Channel 1 and the department's website. So that concludes my presentation. I'll take any questions you may have.
Tenzin, could you just briefly describe retransmission agreements and how those things have changed over the last number of years?
Absolutely. There are 20 broadcast stations in the Bay Area that San Bruno receives. 10 of them, and every year these broadcasters make an election with the FCC whether they want to be a must-carry station or a retransmission consent station. When they elect must-carry, then every cable operator in the area has to carry that station, and we have no choice but to carry it. But when a station elects retransmission consent, then the cable operators have to seek consent from the broadcasters to carry that station. In the past, these negotiations have we were able to reach an agreement on these negotiations through in-kind consideration. In other words, we would exchange advertising, run some bill inserts for the broadcast, etc., and be able to reach an agreement by doing that for carriage. But on a going forward basis, the broadcast, maybe the last two retransmission consent periods, the consent periods are every 3 years, occur every 3 years. The one that we're in right now will expire on December 31st. So over the last two retransmission consent periods, the broadcasters have begun demanding cash license fees for carriage. But so far, through the last two processes, the city has avoided paying any license fees. But over the last few years, the larger cable operators have begun paying a license fee for retransmission consent. So it's making it very difficult for small operators like the city to kind of get away with not paying a license fee. So on a going forward basis, it appears that as we look at these upcoming retransmission consent negotiations, that we would end up paying a fee for that. So that's really driving basically the bulk of the rate increases for this coming year. And the stations that we're going to be that are coming up for negotiations at the end of the year are ABC, which is the local ABC broadcast station, KTVU Channel 2, and its sister station KICU, KTSF, and also, as the city council member remember, 3 years ago we would negotiate with Coffee, and since we could not reach a non-cash agreement, the station ordered us to drop the station. So now. The reason why we weren't able to do that is because had we paid coffee cash, then we would end up paying everybody else cash. That would raise the rates overall. So we kind of balanced that and said, you know what, we're going to continue to keep the rates low as much as we can. But as the things are evolving now, where more and more people are paying cash for carriage, then we'll look at talking to coffee again as well and see if we can reach an agreement and carry that back on our station as well. So those will be the 5 different broadcasters that we'll be dealing with at the end of the year.
Okay. Any questions of staff?
The rates are always higher. Rates have never gone down. They either stabilize or they go up.
Yep, unfortunately.
I'd just like to say that, I mean, as I started reading the staff report, I started getting that sentiments that I'm sure that the subcommittee got, and I was very pleased to, because we did talk a lot about getting those customers back and what type of incentives. We went through reviewing the postcard and everything, and I really look forward to seeing how that turns out. But once I turned the page, I was very proud to see that the subcommittee reduced the rate. So 5% is a lot better than 5.5%. So or 6%. So it's good, and I think we have to accept the fact that rates go up, and we can't give it away.
Anyone else?
Yeah. With that, okay,
Michael.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I was curious about the revenue by product line. How much revenue what percentage of the revenue comes from television versus voice versus data?
At this stage, 80% of the revenue comes from the video business, and we have about 20% coming from the internet business right now. And the commercial service is just picking up right now, so it represents a very small portion of our revenue structure. And out of the video side, on the video side, the bulk of it is in preferred basic cable, which is the rate, the 5% rate that's going to hit that segment of that service tier. And there we have almost 7,500 customers. Mostly all customers take that level of service. So that's how that's broken up.
Right. And if you had to make a wild guess about where we would be in 5 years, where do you see that percentage going?
In terms of, that's a very interesting question, because as I've said in the past, as you can see in the industry statistics and also what we're experiencing in terms of how customers are consuming video today, it's going to be very interesting to see where this all ends up, because more and more customers are going to Netflix, Blockbuster, Amazon to get movies, etc. So what I'm noticing is that the trend for online video is increasing. So albeit that people are changing the way they consume video, from a city perspective, we provide both the video product and we also provide an internet product. So as customers begin to utilize more bandwidth on their internet services, that side of the business is going to continue to grow. And in order to address that issue, last year we launched our commercial services. In that process, we upgraded our internet network to handle that capacity, and we already have begun offering 25 meg, 50 meg, 100 meg services. So as that demand increases, customers can switch and take those products as well. So when people switch from say cable services, go to online video content, but they'll still need a higher capacity to access that content, and the revenue model will shift from, today, say for example, somebody might be paying the city $99 for phone, internet, and cable. Tomorrow, with a shift in the way they're consuming the content, they might be paying $99 just for internet content because they want that higher capacity to be able to do it. So from that perspective, it'll just be a shift. And then in terms of market share, it's going to be, like I said in my presentation, this is going to be jostling for market share because of the new entrant in the market. And as soon as that stabilizes a little bit, then it's just a matter of competing effectively and growing each business segment.
Okay.
So I hope that answers.
Yeah, because one of the things I was thinking about is, at some point it becomes unprofitable to absorb all of the cost of this. And another thing and this is maybe this question is directed at my colleagues on the subcommittee. Has there been any thought about rethinking the franchise fee and how the franchise fee is really affecting the health of the enterprise? Definitely helps the general fund, and maybe now in the current economic situation is not the time we would want to consider cutting that. But if the enterprise is in a situation where it's not economically healthy, and there is that huge contribution to the general fund, would we want to consider reducing that?
Just to be clear, I think that you mean the, not the franchise fee, but the equity transfer. There is, federal law provides for a 5% franchise fee, which is also collected, and I only draw the distinction because that's directly collected as an add-on, as directly collected from ratepayers as every other cable operator in the country does. But in addition to that, there is the equity transfer into the general fund, and while both of them assist the general fund, one is really much more discretionary on our part. And the answer is yes. At least I think that is there was preliminary discussion among the City Council subcommittee, and I think it's a topic that, as difficult as it is something that needs to be considered within the broader context of what is the how do we set rates and view revenues and expenditures in this environment.
Okay. We have a lot of challenges here, but one of the biggest ones, of course, is getting the word out. And the unfortunate thing is you have some very large broadcasting entities that can offer these loss leaders, and we're not in a position really to do that. We're more consistent, but when people sign up for a 6-month deal and then find out that after 6 months or after a year they really get nailed with a contract, then we're bringing some of those people back. We hope to do that with just the flyer that went out just the other day. People realize how consistent we are, on a regular basis. It's going to make a difference, but trying to get that word out when somebody's dangling a couple of dollars in front of you for 6 months is difficult to do. So it's an educational process, and we're trying real hard to get that out there. Rico? Yes, question?
I just want one last comment. Just from a strategic sort of thinking standpoint, I notice a lot, whenever we talk about cable, it's always cable television, and the subject of this is cable television services. It's always cable television. And I was thinking that perhaps a rebranding and rethinking of how we view that enterprise, where we focus more on a more modern, a more focus on a data, not just television, might make it more attractive to consumers that are more interested in data. And that's why I was asking those questions about how is that trend working, and how fast can we expect to see data take over as the cash cow.
Right. I mean, part of the strategy, as described in my report, is to eliminate some of the extra tiers that we have on the data side to kind of beef up and have a strong product that will appeal to a majority of the customers. And I think that's one of the strategies we've taken. In terms of and rebranding, so to speak, I mean, using San Bruno, I mean, we're a municipal operation, so using San Bruno sounds like, I mean, even in our latest postcard that we prepared, we wanted to put a city logo on there to kind of distinguish us from any other cable operator. So from that perspective, rebranding it using something other than, we thought about it in the past, but talked about it with the subcommittee as well, but not using San Bruno in that name somehow sort of diminishes our sort of homegrown quality, so to speak, of who we are. But I mean, we've clearly grown from just being a cable TV operation, that's for sure. I mean, we're no longer just a cable TV operation. We provide data services, we provide commercial services, so essentially, and phone services. So essentially, we are more of a telecommunications company, more so than just a cable company. So yes, I think we do need to start thinking more strategically in terms of how we promote ourselves and how we get more recognition for the fact that we're more of a broadband player than just a cable TV company. So we'll continue to look and pursue that in a more aggressively.
Thank you.
Go.
Mr. Chair, thank you. The mayor just indicated this, but we obviously have folks that have left. You mentioned 800. Then they signed up for a particular period of time. Normally it's 2 years for some of the service providers. Have we taken the look at seeing who's left almost 2 years ago, realizing that that contract is about up, and then trying to promote what we're currently offering to gain them back? Because obviously theirs will go up, ours is down for 3 years, and therefore we can maybe win them back over. Just as a suggestion, I don't know if that's been thought of.
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what we're doing today. I mean, we're not really just sending to those people that are expiring within 2 years, so to speak, but we're looking at all the customers that are not subscribing to our services. So that's going to capture not only the people that are coming off of a 2-year agreement with a competitor, but also that have just recently left or just recently moved into San Bruno. So looking at the whole segment of customers that are not subscribing to us.
I understand that's what the card went to, but are we trying to strategically and personalize
what
the
we did,
hand back out and saying, you know,
Right.
you know, the TLC, the letting you know we're in your backyard. We come out, we're right here. You can get a live person. You can come down and see us in person. You know, maybe their experience wasn't the best, and so they'd like to come back home.
That's exactly what we try to do with the direct sales campaign. So basically, somebody's in front of a customer, prospective customer, and actually talking about the services. And also, we looked at our database and actually provide that specific database to our direct sales representatives to go target those customers in the campaign.
When you say our sales are the agency that was hired?
Yes, I mean, we don't have the staffing to send our own employees out
If
there
you
in
could
the
send
field
Steve
at this
Verpo,
stage.
I'm sure we
I
could
mean,
sell everybody.
Steve Verpo does an excellent job of going out and talking to customers and keeping customers, and Al and myself, we try to, and today, even on a commercial side of the business, it's just Al and I actually, you know, going to knocking on businesses to get sign up for our services. So we continue to do that on a daily basis. So.
Just a suggestion, and then when maybe it comes to the budget study sessions, I'd like to see us address some of the other questions we thought about the future and projections and how we see the structure in the future.
Anything else? Anyone like to introduce the resolution?
Oh, I was gonna make one comment, and
Irene.
I'll introduce the resolution. Also to remind people, we are the only cable operator that offers a 25% discount for any families and residents who are in the low-income bracket. So, yes, this is a 5% raise, but that still is out there. It's still offered because we are owned by ourselves. So with that, I'll introduce the resolution.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item 10D is adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a grant deed and grant of easement pursuant to the public improvements agreement dated August 19th, 2010 between Aimco San Bruno Apartment Partners LP Aimco and the city of San Bruno.
Aimco is the current owner of the property commonly known as Treetops Apartments at the intersection of Skyline Boulevard and Shore Park Road. Last year in June, the City Council approved a amendment to the development plan, extending the planned development permit for 510 10-unit design alternative, and also in the same time approved a renovation design alternative. As part of the renovation design alternative, Aimco represented to the city that it is a housing and urban development funding requirement for the city to take over the ownership of the road, specifically Suzanne Drive and Highland Drive in city ownership. As part of those, at that time, the City Council decided to accept the road, Highland Drive and Suzanne Drive, in the city ownership with the clear expectation that all of the utilities under the road will be maintained in private ownership by EMCO. This action tonight is consistent with your decision made last year, and the subject is accepting the road and also granting a easement to EMCO for the maintenance of those private utilities. At that time, and as part of your decision back last year, was clearly stated that after the acceptance of the road in city ownership, EMCO will be responsible for improving the road, and then the city, after the improvement of that road, the city will accept if the improvement of the road will meet the expectation of the city stated in the improvement agreement. Between now and then was also clarified, and you set your expectation that the liability, the maintenance cost for the road will be EMCO's responsibility. As I said before, EMCO applied for HUD financing for this renovation and design alternative, and HUD requires that all entitlements and discretionary action required for this project be completed prior HUD funding approval. That's the reason why you have in front of you this item tonight. EMCO already started to work on the grading at the corner lot, removing the contaminated soil. If my recommendation, how I said in the beginning, is for you to accept the deed for the road and also to grant easement for the utilities to EMCO. EMCO is here. If you have any question, I can answer.
Good. Any questions of staff or EMCO?
Well, I think they're here, and we're doing this because that's a good sign that the project is moving forward. And so I'd like AMCO to probably say that, confirm that, and then I see that there's a short extension of the date of demolition. So give us an update on what the schedule is.
Sure. Is this on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. First, I'd like to thank staff, and in particular Clara and her group, for the past couple months working on this particular item that's in front of you. We're very excited that things are moving forward. I know those that haven't seen me in a year might think otherwise, but there's been a lot of activity over the past year. In particular, our plans have gone, our construction drawings have gone to 100% with the city, both building department and the building public services department. They've been deemed complete, which basically gets us to the point where we could pull permits as long as conditions of approval are met and financing is obviously achieved. This was a critical step for us to get to our HUD loan. So that's kind of the question that I think we're all getting at, is where are we at with our process? We're excited that things are continuing with HUD. HUD was excited about this project in particular, HUD San Francisco. They told our sponsor, who is Red Capital, that we could go direct to firm. So we have submitted, as of last Friday, our firm application to HUD, which is very exciting for us. What it takes to get to firm is in fact 100% construction drawings, having gone through the city, 100% bid by our general contractor and having him sign off on those dollars. So this is basically gone through the pre-approval process through HUD and has now gone direct to firm. So we're looking at basically a 3 to 4 month process to get through that firm application. So we're not looking at a year like what we were looking at before. This is a great, step forward for the project. We're very excited, and we just want to continue this process along. And the item in front of you tonight is one of those steps that it takes to continue to meet our conditions of approval. And yes, obviously, because of this 3 to 4 month process, we'll be coming in front of you, and we'll be working with staff over the next couple weeks to come in front of you on June 14th, I believe.
Great. Thank you. We're looking forward to this, and we haven't seen you for a year, but we knew where you were.
Thank you.
Any other questions or action?
I'd like to adopt the resolution.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item number 11, reports of commissions, boards, and committees. We don't have any this evening. 12, comments from council members. Okay. Procedurally, to the city attorney, how should I handle this now? We have a closed session coming up, but we also have a special meeting agenda with another closed session.
Right, those can be handled simultaneously. You can just announce we're going into closed session, both at the regular meeting and on the special meeting, for the 2 items that were added.
So do I need to open up a special meeting and have public comment on these?
It's not necessary. You can certainly ask if there is any public comment in the audience at this time.
Okay. This is a special meeting of the council. Oh, Rose, you're going. Good evening. All right. At this time, we will be going into closed session. We have 4 items. The city manager and human resources director requested closed session pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.6 regarding direction for labor negotiations with the police and public safety mid-management bargaining units. Item B, confer with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation, 1 case, California Government Code Section 54954.9A. Also, under our special meeting agenda, we have 2 closed sessions, which is to confer with legal counsel regarding State Regional Water Quality Control Board, citation number R2-2010-0004, California Government Code Section 54956.9A, and also to confer with legal counsel regarding Baykeeper versus City of San Bruno, United States District Court, civil case number 00753SC, California Government Code Section 54956.9A. And these meetings will adjourn to our next City Council meeting to be held here on June 14th, 2011 at 7 p.m.